You know, because you do it in your own life with your family members and your coworkers. You know what works. You know what does not work. I want to throw one other idea at you. My wife made me go to a wedding with her last fall. That may not be the right way to phrase this. You know what, honestly, if you want me to go to your wedding, you probably should not get married on a Saturday in the fall, because there's a lot of stuff going on Saturdays. There's a 3:30 SEC game of the week. There's a 7 o'clock game. I'm all for marriage. I don't know why you can't do it on Monday morning. I really don't. So I told my wife I'm not going. And my wife, she's about 5'4", she weighed 100 pounds. She looked at me and said, "You get your behind in the truck. You're going to your sister's wedding." So I went. You know, I'm sitting there looking at the game on my phone, and it's silent mode. Nobody else knew what I was doing. But you can't help but hear that verse, because you can't go to a verse. Well, you can't go to a wedding without hearing this verse. These three things remain: faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these is love. We already know that. Love wins. Okay, I didn't need to go to this wedding. I know that. But I started thinking, hope must be incredibly powerful to even be mentioned in the same sentence with love. Only three things remain: faith, hope, and love. Hope must be powerful. Do we communicate hope? When we talk to people that we're trying to persuade, talk to people that we're trying to say, there is a better way. There's a different way. There's a better way. And again, I'm not talking about your interactions with people who already agree with you. They don't need to be persuaded. How about the ones that don't? How about the ones that are open-minded? Maybe there is a better way. Maybe there is a different path. Tim Scott and I have been fast friends, to quote my grandmother, use my grandmother's term of art. We've been fast friends since we met in orientation. I know it sounds hyperbolic, but it's actually not. We ate dinner together every night that we were in Washington, even after he went to the Senate. We just had this commitment we made to one another that we were going to check in with each other at some point during the day. So I blocked off dinner. I'm not saying it was his only dinner. He may have had 4 or 5 dinners that night, but we got together every night that we were both there. Same table, same restaurant, just a commitment we made to each other. And we talked about everything in the world, politics, but also lots of non-politics. And he's sharing this story with me of growing up in Charleston, South Carolina. He grew up in a single-parent household, and the dominant male influence in his life was his grandfather, Mr. Artemus Ware. And so at one point, Timmy's mom and his brother and Senator Scott were sharing a bedroom. They were living with his grandfather, Mr. Ware, and so they would go into breakfast, and Mr. Ware would hold up the Charleston Post and Courier because he wanted to impress upon his young grandson the power of education. Education can change lives. Education can get you out of sharing a bedroom with your mom and your brother. Education is the path to prosperity. So he modeled it. He held the Charleston Post and Courier up because he wanted this young, impressionable man to see the power of education and hope for something better. And I said, well, isn't that neat, Tim? You and I are almost exactly the same age. My dad did the same thing. Different newspapers, Spartanburg Herald Journal. We were sitting at the breakfast table, my 3 sisters and me, and my dad's got the paper up because he wants to know, he wants everybody, including God, to know he's reading the newspaper. So he's got it up like this, and one of my sisters was not great at reading body language, so she would continue to talk to him through the newspaper. He might lower it and answer the question, then he'd raise it right back up. I said, isn't that neat, Tim? You and I have that in common. We grew up with similar experiences. My dad was a doctor. but it was your grandfather, and he said the difference, Trey, was your dad was a doctor. My grandfather could not read. My grandfather faked it because he didn't want his grandson to think that picking cotton was the highest and best use of his life. So that young man who grew up in a house with a man who picked cotton wound up picking out a seat in the United States House of Representatives and ultimately the United States Senate. That is a testimony to the beauty of this country, but it is also a testimony to the power of hope. Yes, do we communicate hope? So we know we have to know what we believe and why. We know we have to be mindful that we are persuasive in the way that we communicate it. And all we need right now is one more thing. We have to have somebody to deliver that message. And I get it. I get it. If only the governor would do this. If only my congressman would do that. If only county council, if only the district attorney, if only the Supreme Court. I get it. I get it. I mean, we're not in politics, most of us. We didn't run. We didn't volunteer to do it. Let somebody else do it. Let somebody else make the winning argument. Let somebody else persuade. I got a job. I got a family. I got other stuff going on. Somebody else needs to do this. I didn't raise my hand and run for county council or city council or mayor or Congress or the General Assembly. I didn't do that. I get it. I get it. My dad loved democracy. He didn't practice it when I was growing up, but he loved it. We had one television and he controlled what we watched. And I'm going to be honest with you. My therapist has only recently cleared me to talk about this in public, but Saturday night, he's watching Hee Haw. On Saturday night, you don't know what Hee Haw is? There's college football on there. But he ran a benevolent dictatorship and he controlled what was on the television, so I didn't spend a whole lot of time in the den. But I remember I was a senior in high school and I was walking through the den and I happened to glance at the television, and my father was transfixed because there had been a plane crash in Washington, D.C. Air Florida Flight 90 had crashed into the 14th Street Bridge. The East Coast was in the throes of record cold weather, and the Potomac was frozen, and the plane crashed. And by the time I sat down with my father, it was clear that there were not many survivors, but there were some. And they were in the icy waters of the Potomac. And I sat down on the couch beside my father and I watched as these people, I didn't know their names, had somehow or another survived the unsurvivable. They survived a plane crash. But they're in the icy waters of the Potomac and you're not going to last for very long, so a rescue helicopter, you began to hear the whirring blaze of a rescue helicopter. And that helicopter lowered the rope ladder into the waters of the Potomac, and they fell into the hands of someone you don't know. Just a passenger on a plane. Not a congressman, not a senator, not a cabinet level, just a passenger on the plane. And I watched this man have life in his hands, and he passed it to a stranger. And if you go back and look at the footage, which you can still access, you will see the first person plucked from the icy waters had jet fuel in her eyes. And you can see her clinging to that rope ladder because she couldn't see. as if literally her life depended on it, and it did. And that same scene repeated itself, and every single time this man named Arlen Williams had life either in his grasp or within his reach. And every time he passed life to a stranger, not to his mother, not to his wife, not to his daughter, not to his son, to a stranger. And one by one, they're plucked from the icy waters of the Potomac until finally that rescue helicopter is coming back. It's going to get Arlen Williams because he's sacrificed. But he had succumbed to fatigue and trembled. You don't have to be famous or be a title holder or an office holder. Just have to find something. I'm not even asking you to do what he did. I'm not asking you to die for anything. I'm asking you to find something worth living for. Not worth dying for, worth living for. And then can you